they've been hiding this from you for years. But now it's out in the open. An ancient discovery, buried under the silence of ages, has unexpectedly come to light, and it's leaving even the most skeptical in shock. Deep in a remote, isolated region, archaeologists have stumbled upon a rock covered in strangely familiar symbols. The stone is over 5,000 years old, but what's carved into it challenges everything we know about human history. Carved with millimeter precision, humanoid figures emerge from the surface of the rock, but they are not just faces, arms, or legs. These ancient sculptures show beings with rounded helmets, voluminous clothing, and what looks like backpacks with connected tubes. Details that, in any other context, would be attributed to modern technology. But here, we are talking about millennia ago. How could this be possible? This artifact, hidden for millennia, has now become the center of one of the greatest archaeological controversies of recent times. The images appear to depict beings resembling astronauts, long before the space race, long before the invention of modern technology. Is this a coincidence, or the missing piece of evidence? Many are already calling this discovery the Forbidden Stone, an artifact that could shake the foundations of traditional archaeology. And the more experts try to discredit it, the more questions arise. Why are these figures so faithfully represented? Who, 5,000 years ago, would have been able to represent something that we would only see on NASA missions? The answer may lie in a truth that has been hidden from the public for centuries. Forgotten documents, ignored reports, pieces that didn't fit together until now. This rock may be the key that connects all these pieces, a record of contact, an ancient warning, or even a souvenir left by visitors who don't belong to Earth. Traditional scientists try to label the discovery as symbolic art, but there is something more to it than symbolism. The details are too precise, too technical, too mechanical. It is as if someone has been trying to tell us something, reaching back through the millennia with a message encoded in stone, and that message has finally been deciphered. But what happens when evidence like this comes to light? What do authorities do when a discovery threatens to overturn everything they've been taught in history books? Simple. They keep quiet. They cover it up. They discredit it. Because the truth is dangerous, and this stone is too dangerous to be accepted without resistance. It's not just an ancient sculpture, it's a revelation. Silent evidence that something, or someone, was here, long before us, and what this sculpted figure carries in its hands may be the most disturbing detail of all. This artifact lay forgotten for centuries, until now. It was deep in the arid lands of the Peruvian highlands near the Nazca region, famous for its enigmatic geoglyphs visible only from the sky, that a group of independent archaeologists with no ties to large institutions stumbled upon something that would change the course of history. During an expedition without great expectations, the group came across a partially buried rock formation, worn down by time, but still marked by incredibly preserved carvings. It was as if this stone was waiting to be rediscovered, as if it had withstood the centuries only to emerge now, at a time when humanity is beginning to question everything it has ever believed about its origins. The rock was carefully removed from the ground, and what was revealed was beyond all expectations. Its features do not resemble ancient gods or sacred animals. No. What is engraved there are figures dressed in costumes that directly refer to the modern concept of astronauts. Circular helmets, visors, cylinders attached to the back. What's more, there is a symbol carved next to one of the figures that resembles, with frightening precision, a satellite dish. How is this possible in a sculpture dating back to 3,000 years before Christ? Local teams tried to cover up the discovery. Reports disappeared. Authorities ignored the records. But thanks to leaked photographs and testimonies from those who witnessed the discovery, the mystery could no longer be covered up. There are indications that this stone was mentioned in colonial records, in the forgotten diaries of Spanish explorers who spoke of the rock of the gods clothed in the sun. Something that, at the time, was treated as madness or allegory, but now seems to be taking on much more concrete contours. More than just an archaeological object, this stone emerges as a key piece in a global puzzle about the presence of advanced intelligences in our distant past. And by all indications, this piece was never meant to be seen again, until the veil of silence finally broke. The stone, which measures just over 5 feet wide by nearly 3 feet high, is unusually dense and appears to have been carved from an extremely resistant type of volcanic rock, suggesting that whoever carved it had mastered tools or techniques that still intrigue us today. It was removed from a depth of nearly 6 feet, indicating that it had been buried there for millennia, protected from the elements and human contact. Its surface presents a meticulous relief that defies the logic of traditional archaeology. Every line, every curve seems to have been drawn with surgical precision, and nothing there seems to have been done by chance. The figures carved into the stone are arranged in rows, as if they were part of a narrative or visual record. The most striking of them shows a humanoid being with a perfectly round helmet, covering its entire head, and a front visor marked by a sculpted glow in the shape of a lightning bolt, something that recalls reflections on metal surfaces. On the back of the figure, a kind of backpack with tubes connected to the helmet completes the ensemble, forming a silhouette identical to that of a modern spacesuit. The figure's arms extend toward a floating, oval-shaped object with circular markings that resemble portals or hatches. Around this central figure, smaller figures appear to be observing or following the same phenomenon, and all are wearing variations of the same costume. Some even with what appear to be symbols engraved on their chests, similar to mission emblems or insignia. The feet of the figures do not touch the ground, an unusual artistic choice for the time, as if they were in a state of levitation or weightlessness. There are also inscriptions on the sides, written in unknown characters, which do not correspond to any writing system cataloged to date. Some researchers suggest that these markings may be symbolic forms of visual communication, perhaps a universal language that has been forgotten or deliberately hidden over the centuries. All of this was found not at a known temple or ceremonial center, but on a secluded, rocky outcrop with no trace of habitation or buildings around it, further adding to the mystery of why this particular site was chosen to hide or preserve something so enigmatic. Initial dating. Analyses indicate that the stone predates any civilization with written records of the region, directly challenging the history books and forcing us to reconsider who actually walked these lands thousands of years ago. The impact of the discovery was immediate and resounding. As soon as the first images of the stone circulated among academic groups, specialized forums, and independent researchers, the scientific community was thrown into a state of confusion and disbelief. Veteran archaeologists, accustomed to unraveling millennia-old mysteries based on historical patterns and concrete evidence, found themselves faced with something that simply did not fit into any known narrative. One of the first experts to analyze the artifact declared, in a visibly disturbed tone, "We have never seen anything like this in such ancient records." The phrase, which would be reproduced in dozens of subsequent articles and interviews, became a symbol of the discomfort that the stone caused among scholars. The costumes depicted, with details that directly resemble pressurized helmets, breathing systems, and even reflective visors, are technologically anachronistic for the period to which the rock was dated. An anthropologist who analyzed the sculpture stated, "Barely able to hide his concern. If this artifact is genuine, we are talking about an external interference in human chronology. The idea that an unknown civilization, or even non-human beings, influenced primitive cultures, which supposedly still lived in rudimentary conditions, is something that simply does not fit into the current paradigms of archaeology." Some scientists have tried to downplay the discovery, classifying it as an isolated example of primitive symbolic art, perhaps inspired by altered states of consciousness or spiritual rituals. However, as more technical details of the sculpture have been revealed, these attempts at explanation have begun to lose traction. The geometric precision of the lines, the symmetry of the figures, and the absence of errors in the proportions indicate a technical mastery that is at odds with the technology known at the time. A physicist who had access to the high-resolution images reported that the positioning of the tubes and connections in the suits follows a functional logic that resembles the design of life support systems currently used in space missions. For many, this level of sophistication cannot be the result of chance or primitive imagination, and this perception has generated a cascade effect. Universities refusing to comment on the case, museums denying requests to exhibit it, and a growing silence among official institutions. It is as if there were a deliberate attempt to reduce the visibility of this discovery, to push it into the dark corners of scientific debate, away from the public's gaze. But the growing fascination with this forbidden stone only fuels the suspicion that we are looking at something much bigger, a piece of a puzzle that has been hidden from our eyes for centuries. Faced with pressure from the alternative community and the growing outcry on social media, some voices from traditional science began to speak out, trying to offer explanations within the scope accepted by academia. One of the first hypotheses raised was that the supposed spacesuits were nothing more than primitive religious symbolism. According to this view, the figures represented in the stone were gods or supernatural entities worshipped by ancient cultures, and the helmets, tubes, and backpacks were nothing more than sacred ornaments, stylizations of power or spiritual protection. For these experts, the rounded shape of the heads could symbolize halos of light, divinity, or even the sun, common in several ancient religions, while the objects on the backs could represent ritual elements carried by shamans or priests in forgotten ceremonies. Other scholars have gone even further in trying to rationalize the carving, suggesting that what we are seeing is simply a visual coincidence. They argue that the human mind tends to seek out familiar patterns, and that our modern obsession with space technology could be distorting the interpretation of an ancient artifact with a completely different intent. According to this line of thinking, the tubes could be serpents or branches, the helmets could be just ceremonial masks, and the metal visors could be an illusion created by the wear and tear of the stone over the centuries. They argue that past cultures had deeply spiritual worldviews, and that it is a mistake to apply a modern lens to ancient symbols. Some have even cited examples from other civilizations, such as representations of Egyptian gods with animal heads or winged beings from Mesopotamia, as a way of justifying that the bizarre appearance of the figures should not be taken literally. For these scholars, everything would be the result of a mythological worldview, and not of contact with real entities. However, this explanation fails on a crucial point. None of these comparisons present the level of technical detail that the newly discovered stone offers. What is engraved there are not vague symbolic forms, but specific structures with apparent function in line with contemporary engineering standards, something that, no matter how much they try to deny it, does not fit into purely religious or mythological interpretations. Yet these conventional theories remain the official line defended by institutions and museums that, curiously, refuse to make the stone available for wider public analysis. The narrative of symbolism is held fast, as if to admit any other possibility would open a dangerous breach, capable of calling into question not only this discovery, but the entire accepted chronology of our civilization. While traditional science insists on relying on symbolic and religious explanations, alternative theorists, independent researchers, and occult scholars present much bolder interpretations, and, for many, much more consistent with the details of the stone. The ancient astronaut hypothesis gains strength again with this discovery. For the proponents of this theory, these figures carved with helmets, backpacks, and visors are not representations of gods or spiritual metaphors. They are real portraits of beings who were here, in flesh and blood, thousands of years ago. Visitors from other planets, or perhaps from other galaxies, who descended to Earth in forgotten times and who were received by primitive civilizations as gods due to their appearance, their technology, and their ability to manipulate elements that seemed like magic to the human eyes of the time. These same scholars point out a disturbing coincidence. The stone's geographic location is close to the Nazca lines, which many believe were made to be seen from the sky. Could this rock have been a landing site, a meeting point, or perhaps a sign left by these visitors so that one day, when humanity was ready, the message would be understood? Others go even deeper and recover apocryphal records, indigenous legends, and forbidden texts that speak of pre-Diluvian civilizations that mastered advanced technologies long before the known era. According to these occult narratives, there was an era before ours, a time when the Earth was inhabited by human and non-human beings living together, with access to dimensional portals, unknown energy sources, and knowledge capable of shaping the entire planet. What if this stone is a remnant of this forgotten civilization, a fragment of a history that was erased by the force of time or by much greater interests? There are also those who support the hypothesis of interdimensional visitors, beings that do not come from outer space but from parallel realities, who cross our dimension through energy portals spread across strategic points on the planet. These enthusiasts of quantum physics and metaphysics claim that the sculpture may have been left by entities that not only observe our reality, but interact with it in ways that science cannot yet understand. The anomalous characteristics of the stone, such as its unknown symbolism, three-dimensional features, and the precision of its figures are seen by these researchers as evidence of a communication that transcends common language. For them, we are faced with a message, an artifact left with intention, not for the men of the past, but for those of the future, us. And the fact that this discovery is emerging now, at this very moment in history, raises the suspicion that there is something much greater behind the awakening of this buried secret. What makes this discovery even more intriguing is that it is not isolated. When we place this stone alongside artifacts from other ancient civilizations, we begin to see a pattern that defies any logical explanation based on independent cultural evolution. Why did civilizations so far tear apart carve such similar figures? Why did cultures separated by oceans, millennia, and languages create representations that evoke spacesuits, flying objects, and non-human beings with eerily similar details? In Sumerian temples, for example, we find figures known as the Anunnaki, depicted with round helmets, wings on their backs, and strange objects in their hands, which many believe to be technological devices. These same figures are described in the texts as having come from the heavens and as beings who taught humanity the secrets of agriculture, architecture, and mathematics. In Egyptian records, animal-headed gods such as Horus and Anubis are often shown operating machines, holding rods shaped like antennas or other unknown instruments, and even entering and exiting capsule-like structures. There are even drawings of flying saucers and cigar-shaped objects on the walls of temples at Dendera, which are still controversial today. Among the Mayans, we find the legendary sarcophagus of Pakal, with its relief that many alternative scholars believe depicts a figure reclining inside a craft with his feet on pedals, his hands on controls, and his face covered by something resembling a visor. And now, this 5,000-year-old stone in Peru presents incredibly similar visual elements: helmets, pipes, enigmatic symbols, and, above all, beings that do not seem to belong to Earth as we know it. The similarities are so great that it becomes increasingly difficult to believe that this is just a coincidence. When artifacts separated by continents share the same visual code, the hypothesis of a common origin becomes inevitable. Some researchers are beginning to raise the possibility of a mother civilization, prior to all these cultures, that would have disseminated global knowledge before disappearing under catastrophic events that rewrote the history of the planet. Still, others suggest that all these peoples at different times had contact with the same visitors, with the same beings, and that they recorded these experiences with the artistic resources they had. The pattern exists, and the recently discovered stone in the Peruvian highlands may be the missing piece that unifies all this scattered evidence. What if these visitors were not just myths? What if they are still watching us? The question resonates like an ancient echo, as if it were coming from the walls of the pyramids, from the buried temples, from the starry skies that our ancestors gazed upon with equal parts awe and wonder. Because perhaps what we now call legend, myth, or folklore are actually fragments of a profound truth. A truth that has been whispered generation after generation until it has become almost unrecognizable. What if the ancient gods of lost civilizations never left? What if their presence is still here, disguised, silent, waiting for a moment when we can understand them without fear, without arrogance? When we look at this enigmatic stone, with its indecipherable symbols and figures that defy any traditional archaeological explanation, we are forced to face not only the possibility of contact with non-human intelligences in the past, but also our own ignorance about our role in the universe. Are we really the dominant species? Are we alone, as science has taught us to believe for so long? Or are we just another link in a much larger, much older chain? A chain that stretches beyond Earth, beyond time and space. This discovery touches on something that goes far beyond science and history. It touches the heart of our spirituality, our most intimate beliefs. Because if these entities were really here, or still are, what does that mean about our origin, about our purpose, about what awaits us in the future? Many sacred texts around the world speak of celestial beings, messengers from the stars, prophecies about a glorious return of entities that once walked among men. Is it a coincidence that these descriptions are so similar to modern interpretations of the so-called ancient aliens? Or could it be that, without knowing it, we have already had contact with what today we would call extraterrestrial life, and our minds, still limited by earthly paradigms, interpreted everything as divinity? What if the truth is hidden precisely between what we call spirituality and what we call science? What if the universe, in its unfathomable vastness, is not only full of stars and planets, but also of consciousnesses, of beings, of civilizations that have known us for a long time, that observe us in silence, waiting for the moment when we are ready to understand the message they left carved in stone? This stone may be more than a relic. It may be a warning, a record left by those who have already been here, or by those who will return. And what makes it all the more disturbing is what is carved just below the main figure. There, in a space separate from the other images, there is a symbol that no one has been able to fully decipher to this day. It resembles a spiral surrounded by 3 concentric circles, with lines pointing to the sky, as if indicating a specific point in the firmament. For scholars who analyzed this detail using astronomy software, the arrangement of the elements seems to coincide with a constellation visible only in certain cycles of 5,000 years, the same estimated time since this stone was buried. This raises the suspicion that the sculpture contains a kind of time marker, a countdown, or worse, a visual prophecy intentionally left to be discovered precisely now. As if whoever created it knew that at this exact moment in our evolution, technological, spiritual, and cultural, we would be ready to see beyond stone, beyond art, beyond matter itself. Many already interpret this symbolism as a kind of coded warning, a call for us to prepare ourselves for something that is about to happen. And this idea is reinforced when we observe the faces of the sculpted figures. They do not demonstrate joy or serenity, but rather a fixed, serious gaze, as if they were aware of an inevitable event. Around them, small circular lines repeat themselves, resembling waves, pulses, perhaps even sound frequencies or signals sent by radio. Could these be attempts by these entities to communicate? To send a message in visual form to a future civilization capable of interpreting not only with their eyes, but with their expanded consciousness? The location where the stone was found also reinforces this idea. The exact coordinates trace an invisible line that connects other mysterious points on the planet, such as the monoliths of Easter Island and certain Indian temples. Everything seems connected by an invisible thread of ancient wisdom, as if a network of knowledge had been spread throughout the world with a single purpose: to prepare humanity for something great, something that is about to be revealed. What if what was left carved in that stone was not just a representation of a distant past, but a mirror of what is to come? What if each symbol, each line, each figure was trying to remind us of something that our civilization has forgotten, something that the ancients knew, something that was hidden or buried on purpose? Perhaps, deep down, we are not only unraveling the history of this rock, but also reclaiming part of our own identity as a species. An identity connected to the stars, to cosmic energy, and to beings who walked among us when everything was still silent and mysterious. What else might be hidden beneath our feet? What else awaits us, ready to be revealed, when we are finally ready to see without the limitations of fear or disbelief? If you've come this far, it's because you feel there's something beyond the obvious, something bigger. So, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next revelations. Comment below with the following sentence: "I want to know the truth, so I know you are part of this group that seeks more than ready-made answers." Leave your like to support this content and help spread this message to more people who are also questioning what has been hidden from us. And don't forget, the next video is already appearing on your screen. In it, we will delve into an even more surprising discovery: a submerged pyramid that could change everything we know about the origins of humanity. Click now and continue this journey.